All right, and if that is it, I don't see any birthdays tonight or any celebrations. I am going to turn it over now to Steve. Dan had recommended that we get him on here, and when I made the flyer and people saw his name, I've heard nothing but good stuff. So I'm excited for this one. So, all right, Steve L.
Steve Lamb, alcoholic. It's good to be here. It's good to be sober. I want to thank Tiffany for inviting me, although I noticed that she disclaimed all responsibility right up front. I appreciate that. She's blaming Dan on everything. So my sobriety day is July 27th, 1996. And I've been to Prescott a number of times. I did the shoestring roundup there many years ago. I've talked at the VA meeting there. I've led a retreat there. And the first thing I learned about Prescott is it's Prescott, not Prescott. I made that mistake a couple times before I was corrected. Like I said, my sobriety date is July 27th, 1996. And I've been consecutively sober since then. But that was not the plan. That wasn't the design. What happened to me is I got popped for a DUI. I used to drive drunk all the time, and I didn't think anything was remarkable about it. On this particular occasion, the California Highway Patrol disagreed with me, and I wound up getting sentenced to go to 6 AA meetings in 6 months, which I thought was excessive. So I didn't really want to go. I didn't want to get sober. I didn't want to be sober. It did not sound attractive to me. So I waited quite some time before I finally went. And what I noticed right off the bat is that you guys were telling my story. Now, the facts, the circumstances were all different, but it was still my story. You were talking about an inability to control and enjoy your drinking. And because I can control my drinking for short periods of time, that means I don't drink. But when I'm not drinking, I'm not happy. And if I'm not happy, you're not happy. Nobody's happy. If I'm not controlling my drinking, if I'm enjoying my drinking, there's no regulator on my drinking. I'm the kind of alcoholic that my wife will send me out to get milk. It's not a complicated task. It's actually pretty simple. There's maybe 3 or 4 parts to it. You got to leave the house. You got to go to the store. You got to buy the milk. And then you got to come home. And I'm usually pretty good at 2 or 3 of those tasks. But the whole coming home part, not so much. And what happens to me is, I head to the store and I meet somebody like Dan, and Dan says to me something rather innocuous. He says, "Would you like to have a beer?" Well, of course I'd like to have a beer. I mean, beer is like a basic food group. I mean, what's the harm in having a beer, right? So we go to have a beer, and I drink a beer. And as soon as I drink a beer, the allergic aspect of alcoholism kicks in, and I get incredibly, incredibly thirsty. I'm drinking more and more beer, but because I'm alcoholic, the beer is not sufficient. I need an accelerant. And in my case, the accelerant that I like is tequila. So I'm drinking beer, shooting tequila, drinking beer, shooting tequila. 3 days later, I come to. And I'm selfish and I'm self-centered, but I'm not completely inconsiderate. And I remember, oh, God, I'm supposed to get the milk. So I go to the store, I get the milk. I come home, I open the door, and I tell my wife, "Hey, baby, I got the milk." She is not impressed at all. In fact, she's rather pissed off. I don't understand that there's a time requirement to the task. And in my mind, it feels to me like I just left. I used to view it as time travel. I now realize it's blacking out. But she's quite upset with me. And in reality, everybody that I know is upset with me. Nobody likes the way I drink, and you tell me about it all the time, but I don't really care that much for people, and you're a price that I'm willing to pay, so I'm not stopping drinking. But I get to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm hearing about the stories and the inevitability, and I realize I got to stop drinking. So I get the first half of the first step. I'm powerless over alcohol, but I don't quite grasp the unmanageability part. And for those of you that are new, and I understand there's a lot of recovery homes in Prescott, and I see there's like a whole gang of young ladies. Yeah, I see you too. You are dangerous. Okay, so just calm down. But I want to assure you that I'm not an authority in Alcoholics Anonymous. I wasn't appointed. I wasn't anointed. I'm just the person that Tiffany kind of asked to talk tonight. I mean, really, it was through Dan, but I'm here. And Alcoholics Anonymous is experiential. So you're here to have your experience, not mine, not your sponsors, but yours. And I got that through the steps, but that's not how it started. I'm going to meetings. I'm not drinking. Old timers are telling me, just don't leave before the miracle. Okay, I'm ready. Give me the miracle. Now, I'm not taking any action. I have a lot of activity, and there's a big difference between activity and action. I'm not taking action, and I'm not feeling the miracle. Now, there are other people in the meeting, other old timers, that are telling me, look, you need to do the steps. And they're talking about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the steps. They're talking about the big book, which is where you find the program, which is where you find the steps. They're talking about finding a God or a higher power of your understanding so that you can live and move and have being in the world without drinking alcohol, which is the point of the exercise. They're talking about a sponsor, which is simply a guide that takes you through the process. But I'm not drinking. I'm not an extra credit type of guy. I'm like, I don't want to get over sober here. I'm just waiting for the miracle, and the miracle's not happening, and I feel like I'm going nuts. I am getting progressively worse the longer I go without drinking. So that tells me that if the problem were simply alcohol, once I stopped, I would get better. But the reality is once I stop, I get worse. So I'm a trial lawyer by trade, and I had to do some depositions out of town in Pittsburgh before I did this trial. And I'm about 100 days stark, raving sober, and I go to Pittsburgh, and I'm doing these depositions, and I go back to my hotel room around midweek. And inside the hotel room, they have given me an honor bar. An honor bar. Now, I'm a newcomer. I don't have any honor, but they've given me this little mini fridge. I've got the key to it, and it doesn't have everything I want and need in it, but it's like a really good start. I mean, 2 by 2 by 2 by 2, there's some bourbon and scotch and gin and vodka and beer, domestics, imports. There's pretty good cache of stuff in there. And if you've ever seen the movie Flight with Denzel Washington, you'll know that those little honor bars, they talk to you. It's talking to me. I'm talking to it. We're having this conversation. I'm opening and shutting the honor bar. I arranged the domestics and the imports. I did a little inventory just to get ready, and then I'm getting worried because I'm afraid I'm going to drink. So I go to distract myself. I flip on the television, and I'm flipping back and forth between religious television and porno. Religious television and porno. I'm a newcomer. I didn't say it was a good plan. It's all I got, and I'm getting confused as to who's doing what on what station. But that's an outside issue that I'm not going to go into here. And I love the big book. I love the 12 and 12. But when I finally got a sponsor, one of the things that my sponsor Michael had me do was listen to a series of talks by a guy named Chuck Chamberlain. And he gave these talks at a retreat in Palamesa in 1975. And before he passed away in the 80s, one of his sponsees had it transcribed, and they put it in a book form. And it's not conference-approved literature. It's just one alcoholic talking about his journey of recovery. And in the book, Chuck has a drawing. There's only one drawing in the whole book. And this really is emblematic of my life and who I was. What Chuck does is he draws a circle. And then he puts all the people, plants, and animals in the universe inside the circle of life. And then he puts life, good, God, whatever your concept of a higher power is, inside the circle of life. And then Chuck draws a stick man outside the circle, separate and apart. And that's Chuck, and that's me. And what keeps us outside the circle of life is a thin line that Chuck identifies as ego, or conscious separation from God. In the 11th step, we're striving to have conscious contact. I'm a newcomer. I have conscious separation. It's the grand illusion. It's the big delusion of every alcoholic. The 12 and 12 refers to it as anxious apartness. And I say it's an illusion because it's not real. It is both physically and spiritually impossible for there to be lamb outside the entire circle of life, the entire universe. No one's separate and apart. We're all inside the circle of life. And the better reality is there's not really an edge to that circle. But I have not worked the steps yet, so I don't have any realization of that. But I don't drink. You can call it the dumb luck of the alcoholic. Norm Alpe used to call it seconds and inches. I believe it's the grace of God, but I would not have used that term then. I go downstairs, I get in a car, I go out to the airport, I fly home, I get up the next morning, I've had time to think on the plane, and because I've had time to think on the plane, I've developed a newcomer plan. All newcomers have plans. We all think they're brilliant. I thought mine was brilliant. If you're new and you've got a newcomer plan, I suggest you share it with us, because while you may think it's brilliant, I can assure you it is shrouded in a cloak and veil of stupidity that you cannot even imagine. And even if you're not diverted from your plan, tell us, just because we'll find it incredibly entertaining. My newcomer plan is that I was in the Army for 13 and a half years. I was in the infantry. I'd gone through airborne. I went through ranger training. I went over to Korea. When I was in Korea, I got selected for selection and assessment. I went through that. I went through the qualification course to become a Green Beret. I served in the Middle East in Beirut, Lebanon in 1983, and a couple other tours there. I eventually got picked up by the funded legal education program, and the Army sent me to law school. And when I got out of the Army, I was a JAG. And when I got out of the Army in 1993, I had some things that I had acquired. I had them in a kit bag. I had some weapons and some demolition and 13 passports. And these passports have got my photograph, but different names and from different countries. And in 1993, when I left the Army, I didn't even really think of this as stealing. I just thought, I mean, this could come in handy one day. I might need this, and today's the day. And I've since gotten rid of all this stuff, but my newcomer plan is I'm going to take my blue tourist passport that most people have that are American, and it's it's got your name and your photograph on it. I'm going to leave the country on my name. My plan is I'm going to head to British Columbia, and once I get to British Columbia, I'm going to start heading east. I'm going to start flipping passports and identities, go maybe a week or two over to Europe, come back to British Columbia. Steve Lamb will cease to exist. Now, I have a wife, I have a daughter, but this is really a career move, and they're not involved, so I don't consult with them or talk to them about it. And then my plan is I'm going to head down to Costa Rica, because I've got some former Army associates of mine that are doing some kind of interesting marketing and distribution down in Costa Rica. That's my newcomer plan. I lay all this stuff out. And the 13 passports that I should have turned in 1993, they are all current. They have not expired. But my blue tourist passport has expired. So I'm just devastated because I can't execute this seemingly brilliant newcomer plan. Now, the pathetic thing is this. This is the fall of 1996. It's pre-9/11. I could have flown to British Columbia on my driver's license. I didn't need the passport. Now, I'm relatively well educated. I graduated from college. The Army sent me to law school. The Army sent me to get an LLM, a Master of Laws. I am licensed to practice before the Supreme Court of the United States of America. But that fall morning in 1996, I did not have the cranial capacity, the synaptic ability to understand that I didn't need a passport. I could have just used my driver's license. I mean, I don't think I could have found my butt with both hands. I didn't know what was going on, and I was totally devastated. So I don't know what to do. And my feet just took me to a meeting. And I went to a meeting, and I made the mistake of talking to a guy and telling him that I thought it was time that I should get a sponsor. He lit up, and he takes me outside. He introduces me to a guy that I've never met before. He says, Michael, Steve, Michael, sponsor, sponsee, go with God. And he walks away laughing. And I'm thinking, this is not funny. It's not humorous. And I don't know this guy. This doesn't make sense. I've been told to find someone that has what you want. So in my mind, there should be like an interview process, because I have a complex set of social issues. I mean, not anybody can sponsor this, right? But Michael is all excited because he's just been delivered a new fish, right? So he's reaching in his pocket. He gets out a pencil and a piece of paper. He writes his address and his phone number on it. And he tells me to be at his house Monday night at 6:30. Bring the big book and bring the 12 and 12. And before you come to my house, read from the very beginning of the big book through the doctor's opinion. Make notes and highlight what you agree with, what you disagree with, what you identify with, what you don't identify with, if there's anything you don't understand. And do the same thing in the first chapter in the 12 and 12 on the first step. And come to my house Monday night, 6:30. So I do my assignment and I go to his house and I'm sitting down and he tells me a little bit about himself and he asked me about myself and I tell him a little bit about myself to include my stupid newcomer plan that I'd had. And then he says, okay, open your book, start reading. And I said, no, I read it. I did my assignment. I'm ready to talk about it. He goes, no, open the book and, start at the beginning and start reading. I said, no, really, honestly, I read it. I'm ready to discuss it. He goes, no, that's not how it works. The way we do it is you're going to read a paragraph or two and we're going to discuss it. I'm going to read a paragraph or two and that's how we're going to work through the book. And my first thought was, oh, this is pathetic. This guy's probably kind of stupid. Probably can't read very well. But I'm beaten into a state of reasonless. I got nothing. I got no plan. I don't want to embarrass him. I got nowhere to go. So I open the book and I start reading. Now, I learned later that my sponsor has an advanced degree in nuclear engineering. But for a long time, I thought the guy was an idiot. And so we're sitting there, and if you knew what would happen is we would read. And when we got to a prayer, we said the prayer. And when we got to a step, we worked the step. And it saved my life. And I was absolutely convinced before this process started that it would not work. And if you're thinking that, I'm not trying to be mean or cruel, but we don't really care what you think. We're assuming your thinking is bad. We're assuming that you need a psychic change, like the book talks about, a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience, whatever term you want to use. We're assuming your thinking is the problem that's gotten you here. On page 23 of the big book, after it talks about all the problems of the allergic reaction of alcohol, it says, we think, therefore, the main problem with the alcoholic centers in the mind, not the body. That's the problem. That's the problem that I had after I stopped drinking. So if you think about it, no one's ever come into, I mean, the ladies that are in the recovery home, you haven't been in a meeting hall yet, you haven't seen, but if you go into a meeting hall or a large meeting, we have these, like, there are banners and placards that have the 12 steps and the 12 traditions, and I've never seen anybody come into a meeting and see the 12 steps up on the wall and go, oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. I've been waiting my whole life for this. Tiffany, will you please take me through these 12 golden steps of recovery so that I can find a God of my understanding and live a useful and whole life? No, we don't do that. We look at that and we go, really? That's your plan? That's the best you got? And then as we read more, we're like, oh, 4 and 5, that's like confession. I mean, I'm a lawyer. That's evidence. We're not doing that. No way. We're not doing that. No. Tell someone, no way. And that's not bad enough. You look at 8 and 9, restitution. I mean, I'm not stupid. I know it's their money. But there's a lot of them, they don't even know I've got it. And how is me giving them their money going to help me stay sober? It just makes no sense. My experience with this is none of this makes sense looking forward. It only makes sense looking backward after you've done it. And when it really makes the most sense is when you're sitting down with the next person trying to explain what happened to you as you work through the book with that new person. That's where the magic of Alcoholics Anonymous comes in. So one of the things that I thought I would talk about tonight, particularly because we have some new people, is when we got to the inventory process. Now, first thing I want to say is however your sponsor is telling you to do the inventory is how you should do the inventory. But because I'm a lawyer, I'm a wordsmith, I'm kind of a pain in the ass, my sponsor wanted me to keep it real simple and real basic. So he took me to page 65, and for the new people, that's where there's the 3 columns. And he pointed out that in those 3 columns, there's not even complete sentences. He said, look, you only need 2 or 3 words for each one of these columns. The first column is the resentment, the person, the place, or the institution. The second column, 2 or 3 words, the cause. The third column is how it affects you or the condition. Is it self-esteem, pocketbook, security, ambition, personal relations, or sex relations? And then Michael said, you know, we're going to flip the page to 67. There's not a 4th column in the big book, but it's really easy to look at it this way. So I want you to do another column, a 4th column, and where it says, referring back to our list, we're going to identify mistakes, fault, and blame. Those are what we call character defects. We're looking for selfishness, self-centeredness, self-seeking, dishonesty, The 12 and 12 refers to the 7 deadly sins: pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, sloth. The book refers all the time to fear. List fear. And then identify where you're unwilling to make amends to someone, where you're unwilling to forgive them, where you're unwilling to do what it says on page 67, where you're unwilling to ask God to show you patience and tolerance for this sick man, which sometimes is referred to the sick man prayer. He said it's pretty simple. Just go through that, do that process. He gave me the instructions on the fear inventory and on the sexual conduct inventory. He turned me loose. He said it should take you a few weeks. I think it took me about 5 or 6 weeks. 2 or 3 weeks to do it, and 2 or 3 weeks to think about it. Because I got to tell you, the book says it's simple but not easy. The simple part is the black part, the instructions. The not easy part is me and my ego, which tries to separate me from you and from God. But I eventually got this done, and I show up at his house, and I'm going to read him my 5th step. And even though we share in a general way, I'm going to tell you specifically what the first person is on my 5th step, because I want you to understand how simple this process can be. Okay, so first column, I'm resentful at 2 words, my father. Second column, the cause, 2 words, deserted me. Now, like the book says, Michael's prepared for a long talk. He asked me some questions. I explained to him that it's the early 60s. I'm 4 or 5 years old. I'm living in Las Vegas, Nevada. My father is in the Air Force. He leaves. He goes to Southeast Asia. He goes to Vietnam. He doesn't die there, but he does a number of tours there. He's there for a long time. It seems like 8 or 10 years at least. And he did a couple tours in the Air Force. He joined an outfit called Air America. He met a Thai woman, Lien Thong, married her, apparently before he divorced my mom. I have a half-sister, Peck. I've never met Peck. I've never met Lien Thong. And I've hardly heard from my father in over 3 decades. Third column, how does it affect me? What's the condition? Everything. Self-esteem, pocketbook, security, ambition, personal relations, sex relations. I mean, other than that, things are going pretty good. But it's like my old grand sponsor, Scott Redmond, used to call this a 5-bagger. It's a big deal. My life is shot through this. This is the big resentment. Now I got to flip to the 4th column. I got to look at my mistake, fault, and blame. Well, I don't have any in relation to the cause. I didn't cause my father to go to Vietnam. How about the condition? I come into Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm 37 years old. By the time I'm writing this inventory, I'm 38. What defect of character do I have? If God were to remove it, I would no longer have this resentment. Because resentment is the #1 offender. From it stems all form of spiritual disease. And it goes on later in the book to talk about it being fatal. And at first I thought that that was rather an exaggeration, a bit hyperbolic, but it's true. The rooms are littered with empty chairs of men and women who haven't made it back because they still have a resentment, and many of them die out there. But I'm looking at this, and what I do is I identify 3 things. Anger. I'm still pretty pissed off at my father. Fear. I have a lot of fear. What does the fear look like? In my mind, I really loved my father, and through that love, I conveyed a certain amount of power to him, and he has abused that, and it's hurt me deeply. So there has to be a wall of insulation between me and you and you and me, because it's not safe for you to really know me, and I can't just expose myself and love fearlessly. I can't do that. Now, that does not make for good marital relations or relations with the kids or friends, family, associates, co-workers, anything, but it's all I got. And then, like it says on 67, I am unwilling to see my father as a child of God who could be spiritually sick. I'm unwilling to ask God to help me say the prayer to the sick man, to my father. I'm unwilling to forgive my father. So I read this to Michael, and I'm getting ready to go on to the next person, who coincidentally is Mom. But Michael stops me, and he's like, okay, I want to make sure that I understand this. You're resentful at your father. Yeah, he deserted you, and it's a big deal. You got some residual anger, a lot of fear, and you don't want to forgive your father. I'm like, yeah, that's right, Michael, and I've read ahead. I know there's an 8 and a 9. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. He kind of chuckles, and he says, look, we're just doing the 5th step. We're not going to do that tonight, but we're going to get to it eventually. And I do have one more question, though. I said, what is it? He goes, well, if I understand you correctly, when you came to me and we started reading the book and you asked me to sponsor you, and you told me about this newcomer plan that you had, and it involved some passports, and you were going to go to Costa Rica, and you weren't going to take your wife and your daughter. I mean, you didn't say the words you were going to desert them. But is there a functional difference between what you were planning on doing and what your father actually did? What happened at that moment to me was I felt like the air went out of me. I realized later that that's called ego deflation at depth. It's a spiritual experience. And a lot of times in Alcoholics Anonymous, we talk about spiritual experience like it's got to be the white light type that Bill had. You know, maybe the bush lights on fire, or we hear a voice that says, this is my son or my daughter in whom I'm well pleased. And I'm not discounting those. Those happen to some of us. But my experience is most of us have what would be more like the black light experience, not the white light experience. Kind of like the CSI black light, you know, where they basically spray all over the room and they turn the lights out and then they turn on the fluorescent light and you can see the evidence of the crime. That's the kind that we have. And now I've been shown that I have become the one thing I detested most in life. I've become my father. And I put my head down and I muttered, well, I mean, Michael, I guess if you look at it like that, if you're new, that's why in the fifth step we admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs, because I cannot see me for myself. I have to have someone else, in this case my sponsor, hold a mirror up to me to reflect me back to me, because I can't see that. Now, this is not a happy day. I am not happy about this. I go through the rest of the inventory. I go home and get quiet like it says on the bottom of 75. I review what I've done. I flip over to 76. I'm supposed to do 6 and 7 and start writing an 8-step list. You know, you look in the book, 6 and 7, it's just 2 short paragraphs. You read them, you say the prayer, boom, boom, you're done, no problem. I got to tell you, I was pretty superficial when I did it because I was pretty scared. They have a lot more meaning to me now. In general, 6 is a lot about willingness. 7 is a lot about humility. I have very little of either, but I'm trying to move through this. I write out this 8-step list, and my sponsor has me write out this list, not of just, he wants to know the proposed amends. Apparently, he does not trust me. I'm not sure why that is, but I have to do these proposed amends. And so I show up at his house, and he says, well, let me see the list. So I give him the list. He's looking at the list. He says, your father's not on the list. I'm like, you're damn right he's not on the list. I told you he wasn't going to be on the list. Michael says, do you think you're any better than your father? I'm like, no, Michael, and thank you so much for pointing that out to me. I had a problem with sarcasm for a long time. It still surfaces from time to time. And because I'm not happy, because look, you know, at the end of the meeting, a lot of times we hold hands and we say the Lord's Prayer, right? I said, yeah. Did you like that prayer? I said, yeah, it's a perfectly good prayer. He says, well, you know, there's a clause in that prayer. It goes like this: forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. What do you think that means? Well, it's a damn trick question. That's what I mean. It's a spiritual truth. It's a maxim. I got it. You know, because, well, do you agree with it? I said, yeah, sure. Because, are you willing to do it? No, not with my father. No way. He takes me to page 99 in the 12 and 12. That's where the 11th step prayer is. And part of that says, it is through forgiving that we are forgiven. What do you think of that? Yeah, it makes sense. Are you willing to do it? Yeah, no way. He goes, well, look, 6 and 8 are a lot about willingness. Are you willing to pray for the willingness? I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll give it a shot. He goes, okay, you pray, I'll pray. In the meantime, start making amends. So I start, paying back the money. I'm acting better. I make amends to the wife. I'm back in the big bed. I don't quite have the crossover privileges that I think I deserve, but things are going better. I'm into this active 10-step process. I'm trying to make amends quickly. And by the way, when I was new, quickly was like 2 or 3 weeks. The time frame compresses as you get more time. I'm doing the evening review that it talks about on page 86. I'm doing it again in the morning because when I do it at night, apparently it's all your fault. When I look at it again in the morning, I'm able to see my mistake, fault, and blame. I'm praying, I'm meditating, I'm trying to get into conscious contact with this thing that I don't understand. And by the way, if you're new and you've got a problem with God, I'm here to tell you that God is not the problem. I want you to consider the possibility that it is perhaps the oldest of old ideas that you have. And that's why in chapter 5, it talks about abandoning our old ideas. Consider this. The big book uses the word God over 100 times, but it also uses creative intelligence, universal mind, higher power. At one point in time, God is referred to by Bill as my newfound friend with a capital F. The name is not important. It's the experience. That's why when you look at the third step prayer, it tells you on page 63, the wording was quite optional. The point is to feel it in your heart. In the seventh step prayer, it says we said something like this, not necessarily precisely this, something like this. The point is to have the experience, not to memorize the words. One of the things that helped me, because I had some issues with this, there were old timers that were telling me, find God or die. And I'm thinking, I not only don't want to find God, I'm kind of hoping he doesn't find me. I did some bad stuff out there. There's an 8 and a 9. This isn't going to go well. I mean, one of the things I had to do was I had to make amends to a country, the country of Lebanon. It was interesting. Michael asked me, do you like music? I said, yeah, I like music. He goes, what kind of music do you like? I said, well, I like blues and rock. He said, do you know anyone that doesn't like music? I said, no, I think pretty much everybody likes music. Michael asked me, he said, well, given that you like blues and rock, if you found somebody that liked country western or jazz or pop or rap or classical music, would you tell that person that they have to listen to your music? I said, well, no, that makes no sense. I mean, you like the music that you like. And he said, precisely. That's exactly like the concept of God or a higher power in Alcoholics Anonymous. We're just suggesting that you seek and find. And when you find, we're just suggesting that you get into tune with a rhythm and harmony that makes sense to you. It doesn't have to make sense to me or anybody else, just to you. And my experience is I sponsor quite a few guys. I've got guys who are Protestant. I've got guys who are Catholic. I've guys converted back and forth. I've got some Jews, Buddhist, Muslim, Hindu, one guy who's a Druid. I've got guys who find their higher power on their surfboard out in the ocean. Guys who find their higher power walking through the woods, communing with nature, kind of like Walt Whitman. I've got one guy who's Jewish, but he likes Buddhism, and he refers to himself as a Buju. I'm here to tell you it's all good. It's all good. We have no battle with that whatsoever. So I'm doing this process. I get into the 12th step. I'm trying to practice the principles in all my affairs, and I'm apparently carrying the message because I'm starting to sponsor guys. I'm taking them through the book. They're getting sober, but I'm not making amends to my father. This goes on for a number of years, and I'm having a conversation one day with my sponsor, one of those throwaway conversations. It's not a deep conversation. It's not about the steps. I'm just telling him, hey, I'm not going to be around this week. I'm going up to Anchorage, Alaska to do some depositions. I'm going to miss my home group, which is the Hermosa Beach Monday Night Men's Stag, and I probably won't be back for 3 or 4 days. Michael lights up like a Christmas tree. He goes, man, that is great. You'll make amends to your father. I had forgotten that I had told him my father was living in Wasilla, Alaska, which is about 30 miles outside of Anchorage. So now my sponsor is connecting two clearly unrelated dots. And if you're new, I'll warn you, these sponsors will do that. They pay a lot more attention than you think they do. And so I'm trying to wave them off. I'm like, whoa, Michael. No. I'm just going to go do depositions. This has nothing to do with my father. And he leans forward. He goes, no, you've been praying, right? I said, yeah. So I'm praying. You're praying. God's talking. Can't you hear him? I'm like, frankly, no, I'm not getting the memo. I'm not, no. He goes, no, look, you pray and meditate every morning. I want you to do this over the next week and ask for guidance and see what happens. I'm like, all right, I follow directions. 3 or 4 days into it, what comes to me is I should do this. So I go to Michael and I say, okay, I'm willing to do it. What do I do? Without skipping a beat, he goes, I don't know. I'm not going up there. Talk to God. I'm like, oh, man, you're killing me. You're just killing me. I used to refer to my sponsor as the cosmic cupcake, the mystic muffin. It didn't matter what the problem was. The solution was always God. And what he would say is, pray and meditate, ask for guidance and direction. And while you're waiting for guidance and direction, work with a new guy and call a newcomer. And if you're really having a hard time, just call the new guy and ask him what he's doing. And if that doesn't work, ask him what he's thinking. You'll be entertained for at least 10 minutes. And I found that that's been true. Because what happens to me is when I pray and meditate and I ask for guidance and direction, God sends me to you and you to me. That's just the way it works. So I don't know what I'll do, but I've made a commitment. I call my father. He says he'll see me. I fly up to Anchorage. I go through the terminal. I see my father. He's older than I remembered. He's shorter than I remembered. And he's shuffling towards me. He seems a little bit uncertain. And I stride right up to him. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but when I get up there, I did something that I really hated. When I first got to AA, I didn't like all the hand-holding. I didn't like all the hugging, and who knew that I would miss this? Now that we're in this COVID-19 thing, I now realize how important that is. But I must tell you, and I don't know what happens in Prescott, but in Southern California, the newcomer doesn't get hugged by Tiffany. The newcomer guy gets hugged by the biker with a 3-day growth of beard, who says, "Hey man, yeah, I love you," and you're like, dude, I'm cool. I'm not drinking. I swear to God, I'm good. So it's not I don't like it, right? But without thinking, I grabbed my father and I hugged him, and he buried his head in my shoulder, and he cried, and I cried, and forgiveness occurred. And all I had to do was show up and get out of the way. And if it doesn't make sense to you, it's just because you haven't gone through the process yet. And he's been down here, and I've been up there, and I've met my stepmother and my half sister, and that relationship was restored. And one of the reasons why I know that this works is because it's interesting. We talk a lot about acceptance, and acceptance is important, but acceptance will only get you part way with a really good resentment. And I'm not talking about a simple resentment, like you cut me off in traffic or you piss me off a little bit at a meeting. I'm not that juvenile. I can forgive that type of stuff. But when you're talking about your father deserting you or something significant, my experience is it requires divine intervention. And it usually doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of prayer and meditation, a lot of inventory, a lot of prodding by a sponsor, and then it happens, and it works. And you not only are able to convey the forgiveness, but you receive it. How do I know it works? A little over 4 years ago, I got shot. Now, I've been shot before. I was shot when I was in the Army, but it was a minor flesh wound. But this particular time that I got shot, it was pretty significant. What happened was I was up in Badger, California, which is right outside of Sequoia National Forest. It's a beautiful area, rustic area, the Seven Circles Retreat Center. It's a Saturday morning. We'd had breakfast. I went back to my cabin. I'm sitting on my bed, minding my own business. The gentleman upstairs from me decides it would be a really good opportunity to clear his Glock 9mm weapon, which is ordinarily not a problem. But on this particular occasion, when he pulled the slide back, instead of ejecting a round and clearing the chamber, he jacked a round into the chamber. So when he pointed it to the floor, which was the ceiling above me, and discharged the weapon, the bullet went through the ceiling above me and entered right above my heart and traveled down and buried itself in my sternum. Now, I will tell you, this will get your attention. This will get your attention big time. And, in Alcoholics Anonymous, we talk a lot about serenity. But I got to tell you, the first word out of my mouth was kind of a shortened version of fire truck. And I just put this up real quick. This is the X-ray. You see that right there in the middle, that white thing? That's the bullet. It's still there. And I'm sitting there, and I'm a little bit incredulous because I know I've been shot. I went ahead and I checked for the exit wound. There wasn't an exit wound, and I put my finger in the entry wound, which is going to sound a little weird, but I'm trying to find the round, but I can't find the round because it's buried in my sternum. And in the meantime, the guy from upstairs comes running downstairs. He rounds the corner from the stairs, and he looks at me, and he goes, "What happened?" I'm like, "You shot me. That's what happened." And this guy starts freaking out. I mean, totally freaking out. Freaking out. And then a really peculiar thing happened. I started trying to calm him down. I didn't have a resentment. There was instantaneous forgiveness. And that's because of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I'll tell you, if you're new, hopefully you'll get into the big book, and eventually you'll get into the 12 and 12. And when you're reading the 12 and 12 in the 10th chapter, when it talks about inventory, there's a reference to what a lot of us in AA like to take an occasional retreat, annual or semi-annual, and We'll go to a place that's safe and secure and serene, and we'll maybe have a spiritual advisor or an AA with a lot of time that will take us through some steps or spiritual exercises, or we'll just have some quiet reflection. But it's a safe, secure, serene environment. I got shot on an AA retreat. It gets better. I was leading the retreat. The night before I got shot, I had given a talk on unity, which I thought was very compelling. I just don't think the guy that shot me was paying any attention at all. That evening, the morning I got shot, that evening, I was scheduled to give a talk on acceptance and forgiveness. But the best part is, the guy that shot me, I sponsor him. I sponsored him then, and I sponsor him now. And by the way, for the girls that are in the house, this is not only not required, it's not suggested. Do not shoot your sponsor, okay? And the last thing I want to hear in Prescott is somebody shot their sponsor because Steve Lamb said, oh yeah, apparently you can shoot your sponsor. No, we don't shoot our sponsors in Alcoholics Anonymous. This is just one of these freak accidents that happened. And the thing is, what I've realized is I made a lot of mistakes before I got here, and I've made a lot of mistakes since I've been here. And the one thing that Alcoholics Anonymous, not the one thing, but one of the major things that Alcoholics Anonymous has given me is forgiveness. And in turn, this ability to forgive. But the thing about AA, it's interesting. Bill C. likes to say we come into Alcoholics Anonymous and we take off our clown suit. But we don't throw it away. No, we hang it up in the closet, take it out periodically, and we make mistakes. I'll tell you, to give you a little snapshot of what sometimes is referred to as alcoholic thinking, stone cold sober. I'm going to tell you about the biggest resentment that I had against my wife. And you're going to think it's really childish and stupid and juvenile. And you're probably right. But I tell you, it didn't happen to you. It happened to me. And this is how it goes. So picture this. I'm 2 or 3 years sober. I'm sponsoring guys, I'm doing the deal. And obviously my wife, she does not appreciate all the hard work that I've done for us. And I know this because what she does every night is she takes the trash and the recycling and she puts it out on the stoop. She doesn't put it in the bin. She puts it in the stoop for me. So clearly, I am back in the big bed, but I have not been restored to full husband status. So I'm pissed off. I'm writing inventory, and I go to Michael. I want to talk to him about it. He says, "Well, before you read the inventory, I would just have a question." I said, "Well, what is it?" He goes, "Have you talked to her about it?" I said, "Well, no." He goes, "Well, sometimes our perception of what we think happened isn't what really happened. You sure you don't want to talk to her?" I'm like, Michael. At the time, I'd been married about 12 or 13 years. I said, "Michael, I know what my wife is thinking before she even thinks it." He goes, "Well, we call that mind reading. It's a pretty significant character defect. But if you're not willing to address that, you're going to have to talk to God, because you got to get over this resentment." So, I'm praying, I'm meditating, I'm asking for direction. What comes to me is patience, tolerance, love, and understanding. It's all over the book. People, old timers, are talking about it, but I can't hear it for a while. I finally get it. I pray for it. I ask God for it. And I get it. I got patience, tolerance, love, and understanding. I'm picking up the trash and recycling. I'm putting it in there. I'm okay. I twitch every once in a while, but I'm all right. I'm not writing any more inventory. And by the way, I'm talking to my sponsees, and I'm telling them all the good work that I've done by working through this resentment, not to take credit myself, mind you, just so that they can appreciate the benefits of Alcoholics Anonymous. Obviously, that's not true. I'm suffering from spiritual pride. I don't realize it. Now, I'll tell you, if you're new, the problem with spiritual pride is when you have it, you don't know it. Everybody else sees it, but you don't know it. That's why it's important to have sponsors and a friend that can kind of address these things. But this goes on for like 6 or 7 years. I'm doing the trash recycling. I'm good, right? Then we get a dog. Golden Retriever, Zoe, beautiful dog. She just passed away this last year, but this was a great dog. And when I take her out in the morning, she poops, and I put it in a bag and I throw it in the trash. On nights that I go to a meeting, or used to go to meetings, now I just, it's like a 7-minute commute to get to Prescott. But, when I used to go to meetings, my wife would let the dog out, Zoe in the yard. The dog would poop in the yard. Lynn would pick it up. She'd put it in a bag, but did she put it in the trash? No. She put it on the stoop with the trash and recycling. So now I'm writing inventory. I'm like, No, I got dog poop. I got dog crap, Michael. I mean, look, I'm spiritual. I can deal with the trash recycling, but now I got dog. I know what this means. I got dog crap. He's like, well, have you talked to her? I'm like, well, no, I haven't talked to her. He goes, wait, you're going to have to talk to God. Okay, I go through the same process, right? Same answer. Patience, tolerance, love, and understanding. I pray for it. I ask for it. I get it. I'm good. This goes on for another 6 or 7 years. One day I go out the front door instead of the side door. I don't get the trash recycling and poop. I feel guilty. I feel guilty because I'm guilty. I'm supposed to do this. It's Monday. I got to go to my home group that night. I go home and I know I'm going to make amends to my wife. We're having dinner. Wife, daughters. I wait for the right time and I say, Lynn, you probably noticed I went out the front door instead of the side door. I did not get the trash, recycling, and poop. I know that's my job. I apologize. I'll do better next time. She's like, what? So I've been taught to pause when agitated. I slow down. I'm like, baby, the trash, recycling, and poop. I've only been doing it for over a decade. I know it's my job. And I didn't do it this morning because I went out the front door instead of the side door. I'll be better next time and I'll get it. So what are you talking about? So now I slow down and repeat myself again real slow. And by the way, guys, they love this. The women love this when you do this. And I get done with this and she's giving me this look like, you sure you haven't been drinking? And she says, Steve, I don't know what you're talking about. We've got raccoons and possums out there in the back where the trash recycling is. We've even had some coyotes coming down from Palos Verdes. They've taken some small dogs and cats. And I like to go out there at night. It's creepy. So I put that on the stoop. I figure I'll get it in the morning or the girls will get it or you'll get it. But I don't leave it there for you. So I'm not that quick on the uptake, but I realize I've been working through a resentment for 15, 16 years. It's got no basis in fact. And because I'm so spiritual, I look at my wife and go, I love you, babe. I got to go because I can't talk to her. I got to go to my home group because they'll understand, right? I go to my home group. Bill C's there, my sponsor's there. We're talking. What do? They want to take me around and have me repeat this story to all the new guys. They're like, no, don't miss that part. Tell them everything. Tell them what it's like to be sober. 17 years in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was like, oh my God. That's what we do. And I remember my sponsor said, well, there's good news and bad news. I'm like, wow, what's the bad news? He said, well, it's bad and good, but the bad news is it never ends. I'm like, okay, great. Well, what's the good news? He said, well, the good news is even though it never ends, this is Alcoholics Anonymous. Not only is there always something to do, but there's somebody to do it with. So if you're new, I hope you find that person soon. I hope you get that sponsor. I assure you that sponsor will be entirely entertained. Sometimes people think that they're bothering us when they call us. What happens is you call us and we have that brief moment when we get out of self. We get out of self and we get into God. Thanks for having me here. Appreciate it.
Steve, thank you so much. I got emotional there listening to you talk about that resentment with your father, and thank you. You reminded me of just how beautiful and magical this program is, and I have the same experience, So thank you again for speaking with us tonight, and I've asked Dan to read a vision for you.
I'm Dan. I'm an alcoholic. Thanks, Steve. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answer will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you. Until then,